Hello and welcome to the Microbehunter Microscopy Podcast. My name is Oliver Kim. So hello and welcome again. I would like to answer another question from one of my YouTube viewers. The question is as follows. What if I want to take images with my laptop using the microscope? I also want the microscope to have a screen. Now that's an interesting one because there are actually two different issues here that I want to talk about. First of all, short answer, if you want to connect your microscope to a laptop computer or a desktop computer, this is relatively easily possible. What you need is a dedicated microscope camera which connects to the computer over USB. This is very, very common, especially also in research and so on. Many people actually will use a computer screen or a laptop, of course, to do microscopy. So basically what you have is you can, of course, look through the microscope itself, through the eyepieces. And if you have a phototube, you can have a microscope camera on the phototube. And if you do not have a phototube, a so-called a trinocular head, then you can take one of the eyepieces out and you can insert a microscope camera, and this microscope camera is then directly connected to a laptop, and this works. It will give you a live image. It has advantages and disadvantages, of course, and I'm going to talk about this. Well, of course, one of the advantages is you don't have to look through the eyepieces. So if you have problems looking through the eyepiece, then it's simply more convenient to look at a computer screen, because it's just standing next to you, and then you can take a picture using the computer and you can do certain measurements if you need to do that. So that is basically a very clear advantage, maybe especially for long-term use. If you are spending many hours behind the microscope, maybe it can be a little bit easier on the eyes if you just use a computer screen than having to look through the eyepieces of a microscope. I don't know, it's maybe to a certain extent a question of taste, but in any case a laptop is it's very common to connect them to a microscope. What is not common at all, and what is I actually think is very, very rare and even for good reasons, is for microscopes to have a built-in screen. Okay, I know there are a few microscopes I've seen. These are more into the toy microscope direction that have built-in LCD screens where you can, instead of eyepieces, where you can actually directly look at the things that you want to look at using a small computer screen. The reason why the more advanced microscopes or the slightly better microscopes don't have them is for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons that I would say is, at least for me, that's a main thing is because the microscope optics and the microscope itself has generally a very long-term value. So for example, on my desk I have a microscope here from the 1980s, an Olympus CH microscope, and it works perfectly. Okay, I had it serviced a few months ago, so the guy came and he cleaned the microscope and re-lubricated everything, and it's now as new, really. Microscopes don't age. Okay, and if you take care of it, and if you've got a reasonably good microscope, and if you take care of it, there is no reason why it should not work in 50 years. The thing is totally different with IT equipment, with computer equipment, and to that I also count digital LCD screens and so on. They have a very, very short lifespan, and basically what would be a pity is if you now were to kind of make a good microscope with a built-in screen, because the electronics and all of that is going to outdate very, very quickly, while the microscope itself would retain its value for a very long time. So you don't do that. This would kind of devalue the microscope, and it also reduces the flexibility, because you can still connect a camera to a laptop anyway, and if you want to rotate the picture, you just rotate the camera, right? You wouldn't be able to do that so easily with a microscope with a built-in screen, because this would also have a built-in camera, and then how do you want to rotate the built-in camera which you don't even have access to? Okay, so there are really the modularity that you have nowadays with by having a separate camera, a separate laptop, a separate microscope, and simply connecting them together. You have so much flexibility and modularity that essentially I do not see any advantage of having a microscope with a built-in screen. So that's the thing. Okay. So you have a choice of different cameras. If for example, nowadays it's changing now, but the USB 2.0 cameras, the USB same connection is simply still a little bit too slow to capture high definition video. Now with the USB 3 cameras, the new ones, and modern USB 3 computers, computers equipped with a USB 3 port, that is possible. Okay, so I can even capture high quality video. Okay, with the modern camera systems and computer systems. Yeah, so that's a real big advantage. Okay, one might now ask, okay, well, if you can actually have now a USB camera with a laptop and a microscope, why even bother to have eyepieces to look through? I mean, is it simply not enough to have a camera only and then basically simply have a very simple monocular microscope with one eyepiece, and you take out the eyepiece and put a camera in there, and basically you don't even use the microscope for looking at all, you just use the screen. You also don't do that. The reason being that the USB cameras that you have these days still do not have a sufficiently high dynamic range. Now, what does this mean? The USB cameras, the microscope cameras, they have the problem that they're not able, at least not as well as the human eye is able to, they're not able to catch both very bright and very dark areas at the same time. As soon as something is a little bit too dark, it will come across as completely black. And as soon as something is a little bit bright and there are some details in the bright area, you also cannot see it. Okay? Because many microscope cameras do not have this full dynamic range of brightness yet. They're not able to capture that. And so that means you're kind of losing some details. In most cases, it probably doesn't make a difference, okay? But there are certain cases with some difficult specimens where this can be indeed a problem. This basically means that if you want to see those details, you got to look through the microscope, because the optics in the human eye and so on, that really gives you the maximum dynamic range that is theoretically possible to be seen. And unless you use some kind of specific digital processing techniques with like high dynamic range imaging and so on, where you actually take several pictures and combine them on the computer and so on, unless you want to do stuff like this, cameras don't have the microscope cameras at least don't have the full dynamic range yet. And this is also one of the reasons why you do not want to make microscopes that only rely on a camera. Okay, so that is basically all I wanted to say now. Thank you very much for the question, and yeah, see you next time, and bye bye.